Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Robyn and Porshèa embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Today we are reading chapters 22 through 24 of Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn.
But before we can regale you with Bree's marvelous tales, let's get into what happened last week on Wizard Team. So, previously, we covered chapters 19 through 23, something like that. And in those chapters, Bree is rescued by Alice and some loyal lieges, gets on a getaway plane, or William is waiting for her, and then Cell is like literally dropped off by Lark because he had to punch the boy out in order to drop him where he needed to go because he's Cell. Once they're in the air, they find out more about the Regent's plans, including the fact that they have isolated the heir of Lancelot with a plan to present him as a sign of Arthur if Camelot is revealed, which means that they probably need to kill Nick. And anyone they're sitting after Nick right now is probably going there to assassinate and not to actually retrieve him. Bree is presented with two options. Either she's going to go save Nick, or she should go into hiding. The smart vote would be, and the smart vote equals like William, Alice, probably most of the leaders are like, maybe you should lean towards saving yourself. But she and Cell, the more active people and chaos ridden, are like, let's go for Nick. And, after that, William is like, I gotta go sit down. I can't with this. And everyone else chooses that time to also go sit down. After a good cry, Bree also falls asleep and falls into one of Arthur's memories where there is like basically blood just everywhere and like bloodshed. He misses a lot of people in his round table. They go out. And she sees this behavior, but she doesn't get to do too much remembering on this walk with Arthur because she kind of pops out of it enough to decide she wants to kind of communicate with Lancelot to see if she can talk to Nick again. And lo and behold, it works.
Bum, bum, bum. So that starts chapter 22, where Nick like congeals into form. Luna didn't like that either.
Luna did not like that word.
Said there was no reason. There was no reason for it. You're right. My bad. So Bree pulls Nick into this memory and he solidifies as himself. And
that makes it sound like a guppy from like Power Rangers, like how they just kind of like.
Well, what am I supposed? He becomes he is in the front of Lancelot. I don't know,
but he's there. And Lancelot, like Lancelot goes from like being like in like non-playable character mode into Nick. Basically, is what happens.
Basically, but they're both able to speak to each other. 1 second. Okay, Luna decided that she is just going to go back to sleep. They're both able to speak to each other about what's happening in the present. The rest of the memory kind of fades into the background. And Bree explains to Nick that they're in a memory dimension and that she is a medium, which is why Arthur like came up at the Ogoff, which is like what he asked, because Nick has been gone and they haven't had a time, like they haven't really been able to even discuss what happened after she pulled Excalibur, because they went back to the lodge to shower and sleep, and then he got snatched up and has been in damsel mode ever since. So Bree also tells Nick that Arthur wants her to summon him, and he's like, you don't have to do anything Arthur wants you to do. And she asks if he's okay, and he's like, actually no, I'm not, which I really rate. And I want to say I do not MVP Nick at the end of this, spoiler alert, but like if we were only doing one chapter, he would get the MVP of this chapter. We're not doing it that way anymore, so that's not what happens. But because he just is like very, in this conversation with Bree, I feel like he's very truthful and honest, but also supportive and accountable in a lot of ways in which we're just like not really used to seeing from, I think, a lot of, or maybe me, because I've been reading a lot of like the love interest who's just gruff and quiet and doesn't actually speak. And so I just really appreciate like the communication that's happening here. Um and the honesty too. So he's like, I'm not okay. Um they were found by two mage guards earlier a few weeks ago. And then Isaac came back bloody, and ever since then they've been moving more and more often. Um I just want to talk about the fact of how much money and resources it takes to kind of be on the run in the way in which they're on the run. Because he's like, we're at a hotel now. And you just get the sense from what we know of Dud Davis, like they're not staying in like roadside motels. Not that they're like at the Ritz or anything like that, but they're not sleeping in, like the rest areas the side of the road in the back of the truck. Like they're at a hotel. They've checked in. They're getting food, right? Like, and they're constantly moving. So they're constantly paying for gas, paying for hotel rooms, paying for food, like all of the stuff in which like we're about to see with Bree and them, like they go to like a safe house and hunker down and are eating like cup noodles, basically. And so even on the run and even with like the power of the order chasing them, they still have the resources to like be on the run comfortably and stay ahead of the mage guard. Uh so Bree is like, or Nick is kind of filling Bree in on like where they're at and what's happening. They're kind of on the East Coast now, in like the Atlantic seaboard. Um, and Bree is going to like try to warn Nick that the Regents are planning on killing him, but he's like, I already know. Dud Davis is still like in communication with, like he has like connections within the order network, and so he is also, in the way that we talked that the in the previous episode we talked about like the liege network and them like like spreading information to each other, even if the other people don't know that like Samira and them are working to break Bree out. They are passing information along and like what's actually going on with the Regents. Dud Davis is also still kind of plugged into that network, that information network as well. So he already knows that the Regents have isolated the Lancelot heir after Nick. They've already figured out that they're planning on killing him, and he still tells Bree, do not look for me. Do not come try to save me. It's too dangerous. He says like his father is erratic and blames Bree for stealing their birthright. And Bree's like, I didn't steal anything. Nick is like, I know, like, already kind of has figured out how Bree became Lancelot, and then says, apologizes to her for his ancestors, for what she's going through, and says that like Isaac and his father are frustrated because they're trying to trace Bree's line to find out who the actual heir of Arthur, or the next heir of Arthur would be, like the scion if Bree is killed. And Bree notes that like if she is killed by Nick's father and not a demon, that won't
doesn't matter who she's killed by. If she's killed, she won't be able to pass on the legacy of Arthur.
She won't be able to pass on the legacy of Arthur, but the line won't die. Like the spell of eternity still exists. I don't know why that is a loophole, I guess, because it feels like then like a demon could just hire a hitman or something once they know that Bree's. I don't understand. I don't understand the loophole.
I think
But
the real loophole is for the order, because if the order tries to get rid of her, then they'll have to try to. It's kind of like trying to find the avatar. Like you'd have to try to go around in the world and try to find the avatar, and like so that's the problem for them. For the demons, it probably I don't know that what the demon's actual aim is. That's why I'm kind of like I'm like until we know what the demon's actual plan and strategy, because it seems like they're trying to kill Arthur, but they could be trying to retrieve Arthur. We just don't know. And
yeah, I just mean in terms of like Bree dying, the way that I understood it from the end of Legendborn was that if she dies while she's awakened as Arthur, then the spell dies, and like the line is
I don't know if she has
like
to be awakened for
all
it
of
to take it out. Like I think if she dies, period, that ends their just understanding of who Arthur is, because again it becomes
no,
the
no, no,
avatar.
that ends their understanding of who the next, like they wouldn't know who Arthur, who becomes. I'm saying they are always talking about how if the sign of Arthur dies while they're awake, then the spell of eternity ends. And that's why it's like really important for them. And that's why it's Camland, and it's very important why the regents not only couldn't hurt Bree because they don't know who the next in line is for Arthur, but also if they kill her while she's awakened as Arthur, then the whole shit crumbles. Like the spell is over. That's how I understood it until she's like, oh, well, he could kill me and then it would pass on.
I think it's like
And
if
I was like, how does that work?
I wonder if
So,
it's awakened or oath. Like I wonder if it's more that gift, because like she's technically awakened. Arthur is awakened her, so
yeah, that's why I'm very confused.
I
Because,
wonder if it's
okay,
more
so,
about the oath than it is about that. But before I was because like that one thing I wanted to note before we got to like Nick apologizing was the way that like whenever she mentions to him that they're planning to blame everything on Cell, how Nick reacts is very thruple of them. Like it's a thruple like love triangle kind of moment for like
mhm.
his like care and warmth for Cell. And also just noting like how unimaginative the regents are, because as Nick points out, like this is like the same way that they treated Cell's mother. So I'm like they just like find a game and they keep playing the same game over and over again. They don't actually try to reimagine anything, because it's like why not? Why should I even try to do anything different? It worked last time, it'll work again now.
Yeah. So I went back. So page 209, it says, Bree says, well, because Nick is saying it doesn't matter to Dud Davis, you represent everything he can't have and everything he's owed. And Bree responds, but he can't want me dead. If he kills me instead of a demon, the spell would be safe, sure, but the line of Arthur would disappear. I don't have any kids. And that's like where I got confused, because it's like, so the spell is only in jeopardy if she dies at the hands of a demon. But
It
that
doesn't
feels
make
like
any
it leaves
sense
a
to
lot of,
me.
it doesn't make any, like, yeah, it leaves a lot of loopholes to me. And then like what happens if she dies at the hands of a Merlin or a Cambion who's part demon? You know, like I'm just like I have questions. That line, I have questions. Um Nick also in that moment where you're talking about him bringing up like Cell and um how they're just kind of replaying the greatest hits of Legendborn nonsense. He asked Bree how Cell's doing, and she says that he's fine, and that William thinks that because he's still serving the order and helping her, that his oaths are okay. And Nick says that tells her that Cell's sense of duty, he will not he will remove himself from the equation if he becomes a danger before anyone else forces him to. He Nick says like before the regents force him to, but I don't think that Bree really explains to Nick, what's going on with her and the regents? Well, because I'm like, the regents aren't going to be forced and sell to go anywhere because they are on the run from the regents. And then Nick apologizes to Bree for his ancestors, and he talks about how the order demands a lot from everyone, but like the sacrifice and what they demanded from Bree's ancestors, and then Bree is more than like anyone should have to deal with. And I think that it's one of those things where um Bree is like feels a way about accepting the apology for Vera and for her ancestors, but also acknowledges that like no one's apologized. Like no one ever apologized to Vera. No one's apologized to anyone in her family. No one apologized to her. Um, and even if it's an apology that she doesn't feel ready to accept, it's like the acknowledgement that something terrible happened and that uh this is happening because of violence. And I forget what how Nick says it, because he's like the legacy of um he says the order steals something from all of us. Arthur multiplies the effect and concentrates it, but they've taken more from you than anyone else, more than anyone should bear. And then he says that the I think he said something like along the terms of like the legacy of the order is violence, like not power, but violence. And then she tells him what Seth just told her about the fact that like their relationship is kind of foreboding. And he's like, they've taken enough, they are not taking this, and then they kiss. And it's call and
Okay, before we
response.
get into that, um, I just wanted to note that like they kind of get into that conversation. One, I just want to acknowledge the fact that like this is a white man as written by a black woman, and so like it's
Yeah.
very clear in that, and part of the way that they get into the conversation about Bree's legacy, well, the legacy that created Bree is the fact that Dead and the Regents have more resources to track down Bree's ancestry than Bree and her family does because of who they are and their like violent relationship with being slaveholders. And like the reason why it's so hard for them to find that information easily is because they made that part of their record keeping to try to obscure that kind of stuff to keep black folk from being able to find each other whenever they were given the ability to find each other or to like even have testament to the fact of what they were doing, even though they were doing it.
Mhm.
So Bree has a resentment towards that, and then when when Nick names like the violence, I like that he names it as like again, this is a black woman writing as a white man, but I like that he names it as like harm, hurt, theft. And I think theft is also like theft of life, so death as well in that, and then the brutality of men who design and destroy legends. And that's all. Like they obscure the records, they are enabled to act of violence and erase what violence they did, all because they have the ability to design and destroy the legends that they write about all this. And then um there's also because the death factor of it comes in too when they're thinking about the abatement and like the shortened lifespans, and being a scion means that Bree's life has risk, like as just being a scion, like what she has to risk to like be part of like trying to keep demons away and all that stuff, but also her life is being shortened, um, and none of it is right and fair or just. It's just what it is. And it's like, but the whole legend part of it says that the order is supposed to be all those things. It's supposed to be right. It's supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be just. So it's just
Yeah.
like, it's a really cool, like, I guess, nod to like at no point in the storytelling does Tracy let up on being like this is where we are by design, and the design was by the same folk who are trying to like be like, oh crap, like now I have a problem with the design. Like it's just like really messed up in that way.
There is also this moment too where Nick says that like his dad and Isaac are trying to track down like who else would be in Arthur's line, and they are frustrated trying to trace the lines because they only can go off of first names.
Mhm.
And
That's
like
what I was saying, yeah.
and yeah, and so like everything that you said about that, but then it's also like Bree has this moment of like, yes, this is by the first names is
Y'all
by
did that.
design. Y'all did that. But it's also this moment to me where it's like all of all of this is a problem of your own making, but also what is the hope? Like that a cousin of a cousin or something. I don't fully understand how the line split, but that like somehow the next um the next scion up is white. Is that like are you just gonna like what is the plan? Like they're just gonna keep going down the line until they find a
I'm
white
sure that's what they would
person?
want to do, but I'm pretty sure the answer is they have to because they're only finding first names. I'm guessing that means that they're looking directly for the next Black person.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like, because I'm assuming like they want to have cousin like I'm assuming the line goes through cousins and things like that. I personally don't think that there is another one because of the way
No,
the
because of
blood
the way the line
craft
of Vera
works.
works, yeah.
Yeah, the line of Vera works. I think it's just Bree. It's just Big Bree.
Yeah, and
Um,
like, it doesn't sound like the wife of the Davis that raped Vera, like, was having
mhm.
kids. Like, it seems like
No,
she had Lancelot's kid. She didn't have
she had
Doug's
Lancelot's
kid.
kid,
She didn't have
and
that
then
Doug's kids, whoever that Davis was.
yeah, did she have like additional kids by Davis? I don't.
But
It doesn't
it
sound
doesn't
like
seem
it.
like so because I
It
don't feel
doesn't.
like
Yeah,
they wouldn't be reaching through Bree's, like, bloodline to try to find
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think it's really interesting in that case because and I think we talked about this during Legendborn when we got to the part where we found out about Bree, like how Bree becomes a sign of Arthur. But they're so arrogant about the power that they hold, and they're so convinced that like Dud Davis over here talking about how Bree stole this from him, as opposed to the fact that your ancestor like maliciously, but also very irresponsibly gave it away, gave it away, shoved it to someone else. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to figure out like the best way to say this. It's like an arrogance. You're talking about like the divine rights of kings and like God chooses these bloodlines and things like that. Um, in a way that like only exist in like some of these like especially these 6th century kind of monarchies where
Mhm.
their belief is that like Arthur was touched by God to rule and hand chosen and his line, and all of that is found in the power of blood or whatever. It's this like arrogance of that idea that they are like predisposed, predetermined to rule and to hold power. Um, that they can do whatever they want with this power and it will always come back to them. Like there are no consequences or no lasting consequences to their actions and to the violence that they've wrought. And any consequences are actually not their fault. It's actual error. They're not consequences at all. They're punishments or violence from other people, right? So now instead of Bree and the line of air being the consequences of their own violence and like the the consequences of their own violence and their own just like hubris, I guess,
Mhm.
of recklessly enacting that kind of violence on people. It's that the line of Vera stole or took their power. And it's just such a gross way of viewing the world, but it's also very, like I said, it's like, what is your end game that, or like, what then is acceptable? Um, that the power just has to come back to you because you're divinely, inherently the only ones worthy of it. You know what I mean? Like the logic just falls apart. You can do all of these terrible things, and you can, and this I think goes to like all of it, like kingdoms, colonizers, imperialism, like you can just do all of these terrible things, and the
Justification.
yeah, like the means are always, or the ends are always justified, or the means always justify the ends. Um, I don't know. It just is like, it's very upsetting that if you just like try to put yourself in the shoes of the Davises, but also the regents and stuff. Because like I said, like what is the end goal? If there was by some chance, like even at this point, Nick, who is their blonde-haired, blue-eyed, he's not good enough. He's not compliant enough. He's not pliant enough. So they're gonna get rid of him to force that legacy onto someone who they can control. Um, it's just gross. The whole thing is gross. We should just move on. Like, there's numerous ways in which this whole like thought process and worldview is just fucked, but it's also like illogical, which I think just is like probably the best way of explaining imperialism, racism,
White supremacy.
isms, oppressive thoughts. Is like it's all illogical.
Yeah. White supremacy is very illogical. I was going to just say that it's really interesting the ways that it does and doesn't show up in Nick, and that like he generally doesn't seem to hold too much onto that like concept as like being truthful, but in the same time that he's weighing, like he asserts that like Bree suffers the most at the hands of Arthur. He also says that he's like being um that Arthur stole from him. And I'm like, was it Arthur who stole from you? Like, is this, are you thinking about like yourself as Lancelot? Like, Lancelot, like Arthur and Lancelot had a bad relationship. They, like, Lancelot feels like he was like had stuff stolen from him because, like, the person who stole from you was your father when it comes to
Yeah.
like moving in a way because of he thought that you were the like sign of Arthur. And that's just like strange that Nick puts himself in that like thought point, and the same time that he's also saying that like, in a way that he's moving forward about it all, and Bree being the sign of Arthur and saying that like she's always been it. Like I think he, like how he's moving past how his like father and his father's mage are reacting to it. Um so I think it's just interesting with Nick. And that's why again, I don't I don't trust Nick. I don't trust any of the people who've been like indoctrinated in this way, because it just feels like, why, like I get that you feel owed, but I don't get why you feel owed by Arthur in particular.
I I read it so much as like the, not actually Arthur, but the mythos of Arthur that has been pushed by the order for this long is what in Nick's mind has like pushed his father into this like crazed belief system, right? Um Making his father think like we need to go back to the old ways, that people are not giving due deference to the Davises and that the Regents are hoarding this power that should belong to the Davises and should belong to Arthur. And I think it's because of in the same way that like Bree notices when she's going when she's in the institute that like this mythos and stuff is used as just a means to control the Legendborn. But the Regents have very much adapted to the times and like also have done everything that they can to consolidate power. That mythos was like used to kind of control Davis, but also then turns and poisons him into thinking that he is owed all of this stuff, which in turn loses his mom. And it kind of goes back to the whole thing of like white supremacy not letting the like allies, I was about to say the good whites, but like not letting the allies be very clear-minded about the racism that's happening, because they can kind of, I don't think that Nick wants to, like, he knows that his dad is in the wrong, but I think he needs there to be a reasonable explanation and a villain that pushed his dad to
But
the point
the
where he
villain
is.
being
And the
Arthur
villain,
and not the Order is really
it's
interesting to
because,
me. That shows how
yeah, and I,
indoctrinated Nick is into the
yeah,
Order. Yeah, like, and that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. I don't trust any of this because I'm like, y'all, like, you're too indoctrinated where you're putting it on Arthur. You've never heard the man in your head. You don't even know what he rolls with, right? You're not blaming your father because your father is the actual person who's taking the actions here, and you're not blaming that person who's doing these bad actions. You're blaming the mythical person that was supposed to be in your head at some point, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, put it on the Order, put it
yeah.
on on Lancelot maybe, but don't put it on your father,
It's not even on
or your
Lancelot. It's
father. Don't put it
really,
on Arthur. Like, and
yeah,
not that I'm like, never will I ever soapbox for Arthur,
yeah.
but it just seems like, as you can,
But
it's to me, it's showcasing a point of view in Nick's brain that I think is really poignant, and like it should be kind of pointed out as we're going along, because like I feel like some of the hints that we've gotten from the art coming out for the next book, like is like showcasing like Nick going to a dark place, and I feel like this is a good hint along the road of Nick being in a dark place.
yeah, I think too, it is and I wonder, I'm not Tracy, so I can't say, but I wonder if it is a subtle point that she is trying to make, right? Like there's a lot of times in which we see that like these people, and Alice says in the next chapter, I believe, that like there a lot of these people are like so closely tied, and in basically she's like they're all
It's in the last chapter.
women. Oh, okay. But it's like they're all swimming in the soup of white supremacy, and some of them are like treading water better than others, but they are all in there. And it's like they're all swimming in the soup of the Legendborn and this order. And yeah, and so I think that I wonder if that was purposeful by Tracy, because I agree with you. And yeah, I don't know. I think partially human nature. I'm not gonna say human nature. I do this a lot where I don't want to, I love to like push the blame off on someone else, or like have a big bad. And it's much easier for it to be Arthur, who no one has like seen in centuries. Like the last Camland was decades. Well, like Nick definitely hasn't seen that, right? So that's an easier thing than these people that he's grown up with. And um even though he doesn't trust them and doesn't align himself with them, it's harder to just like sit with the fact that the vast majority of his life he has been surrounded by villains.
Hmm.
And because I think maybe it's like, well, how far removed am I from the villainy? How easy will it be for me to stumble into the villainy? Right? he's not being, he even tells like Bree, like they're not harming him, but his dad is like out of control, he says, like he's losing it, or he's like too far gone or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's not that Nick had sat out of the order because he was like morally opposed to everything about the order. Like in a way that he was like, I'll never go back. Like you can't drag me there. Like, and I'm only here to save the black girl from what I know to be a really racist and messed up system. He was just kind of like, I'm over it. Like that my father's trying to tell me I'm supposed to be this big guy on campus, and I don't want nothing to do with that. Like my dad's told me enough. He let my mother get mesmered into not remembering me. I don't really like. It's kind of, it felt more like a rebellion against his father mostly than it felt like
Yeah.
a rebellion against the order. And like again, I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of like have my like side eye to him and Bree having relationships. I just don't trust that his heart's in the right place. Like his heart's not in the right place to be in a relationship with him if he's like justifying his father's actions by again a mythological person that Bree happens to have versus like the actual people who were putting all these like bad acts into place.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I yeah. Yeah.
So go proceed with the romance, but I just don't see it.
So they kiss. Bree gives into the like it's call and response, and it's all encompassing, and it's a kiss. And Nick is like, I hope I didn't just kiss an old 6th century king. And she's like, no, it was me. But then Arthur, always present, snatches her back.
Which I
And
think
so
I will
she,
just note on the romance part, I think is interesting that just as soon as she started thinking about Sestra and how like Scions being involved being a problem, Arthur pokes his head up. Like
mhm.
he very clearly has an investment on the lines being like the order working the way the order's supposed to work, quote unquote.
Oh, I mean, I do think that no matter, and we've talked about like how corrupt the regents are, and I think that the regents and the regency itself is corrupt in a way that like Arthur probably didn't foresee,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also a corrupt, like he's not a hero. He's also a
Mm-hmm.
corrupt figure, and so they are, for the most part, moving. Like Arthur is more closely aligned to like what the regents are going for than what Bree and Nick and the Legendborn are going for, and I think a lot of that is because um their true aim is power and the amassing of power. And it goes back to what we were kind of saying about like, or the questions we were asking last episode about like who actually started this war. And we get a little bit more into like how some of the lieges feel about this. Some of them are the ones that in which that are helping Bree feel about this. Yeah, who actually started this, and is the true aim really about saving onceborns, or is it about power, amassing power, and basically colonizing magic and
Multiple realms. Like you're trying to
the
colonize
realm? Yeah,
the like whatever also whatever universe this is, whatever number that is in the Legend Warren like verse, and then also the realm of like the demons. And I
yeah,
just like just what came to my mind just now was that like at some point we're gonna have to get a flashback or an answer to like what started all this, like with like the Arthur and the Round Table feeling like they had to take it upon themselves to start taking the battles to the demon realm. And I can't wait till we get there because that definitely has to be like an episode title of like, whose Camelon is it anyway? Like, who started?
yeah.
Like, who? Why is this happening? Like, yeah, I can't wait to. It's gonna be interesting when we actually get there.
I feel like just from this, it's like more and more. y'all started this shit. Like, y'all, I'm excited to see, and I hope it's an Oathbound, because I don't know, like, you know, me and Patience and me, we don't get along. I want to know. This is a question that I have. I want to know as soon as possible. So I hope it's an Oathbound, but I feel very convinced by now that this whole war is not only started by, but being continued and perpetrated by the Order. And that it's not about defeating demons so much as it is about colonizing the power that they hold and the magic that they have, and then using that to their own ends, because ain't no way. Okay? In the words of the great philosopher Future, ain't no way. Ain't no fucking way. Okay?
Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective, which provides content through the lens of critical and creative fandom. In B&C's Discord, you can not only find a channel dedicated to all things Wizard Team, but spaces to connect with other fellow nerds about stories across media, genre, and more. Join a group read, find book recommendations, and maybe even get the juice to write your own story. Just go to bnc-community.com to join. Are you loving our commentary on Black fantasy stories and want to hear thoughts on more classic tales? Tolkien Black Folks is a hashtag and podcast where you can find all kinds of Black nerdy discussions about Middle-earth. Check out previous episodes on the BNC Presents podcast feed, and if you're a Black Tolkien fan, make sure to use the hashtag during Season 2 of The Rings of Power.
So she gets snatched out of this moment with Nick and is back into the plane between life and death. So like what she sees as those streams, and she's like standing in Arthur's stream, and she begins to talk to Arthur. He doesn't appear, though. I feel like it's just like a disembodied voice, and she finds out like Arthur wasn't there while she was talking to Nick, so he didn't glean, like he wasn't able to hear their conversation. He didn't even know where they were. When he's at rest and when he's not being summoned, I guess, he's in Camelot. That's where he sleeps, ceases to be. I don't know. And he then bargains with her, because she's like, take me back to Nick. He then bargains with her, like, if you summon me, I can not only like teach you to use my power, but I will help you speak to Nick again through Lancelot. I will like give you these memories of me and Lancelot so that you can then call Nick. And I just think that it is the height of like, ugh. And again, it's all about power with this man, this ghost. But like, you set up this messy ass spell, and now you're holding it against her to teach her to use your power? Like, that's her power now.
It's also messed
That's
up
her
because,
inheritance.
like, there's just so much about it that is, like, galling. One, in, like, the height of caucasity. One of them is the fact that, like, he's never been able to communicate with any of his, like, bearers or whatever you want to call those scions or whatever before. And we say this because, I say that with a grain of salt because, like, he hasn't been summoned before, as far as we know. We just know, like, he's never had to interact with another person as Scion because there has never been a Camelon since the original Camelon, which he was part of. So that he's never been around. And so all he was prepared to do was to inhabit bodies in the way that the rest of the round table does. And whenever he gets Bree, he's like, oh, there's extra abilities here. You didn't even know that that was an option for you. So as soon as you get an option, you take the extra mile, 2 miles, 3 miles past that one thing that you just found out about. And so the same thing happens here. He knew that he could manipulate her brain, her dream state, to invoke a memory that he chose because he did it before a couple of chapters ago. So now he's like, okay, I know I can do that again. He does it to her again. And he does not know that she communicated with Lancelot in the last memory. Did not know that she had just did it just now. But as soon as he finds out about it, he's like, another way as an opportunist that I can take an opportunity with her, because I've been holding back on giving her my strength and my power this whole time. And she hasn't like gotten the like, you know, she hasn't felt any impulse to actually try to like work with me. So let me kind of try to hold and dangle other carrots in front of her that I just found out about. And I'm like, if that's not the height of opportunistic, and like there's ways to be a good opportunist, but he is actually being the very kind of colonizer kind, like the worst kind of opportunist, because you
Right.
the discovery that you just made, but you know it wasn't your discovery to make, it was her discovery about herself, and here you are.
And the like, I will let you into my memories so that you can speak to Nick. That is her
You
power.
were already like, she was taking advantage of the fact that she was placed in a place where she could not do nothing else but be traumatized by your blood shed, and you're gonna use that against her, that she found solace in a reckless place that you put her in.
And like you are going to like, I don't know. I dislike this man.
Yeah.
This ghost.
Yeah.
So much. So after he finds out that she actually wasn't paying attention to his stupid ass memory, his trauma vision, she's like, well, what was I supposed to learn from that? And he's like, you were supposed to learn that dragons are fiercely loyal and never forget what was taken from them. They protect what is theirs and burn the rest. And I'm like, you're supposed to learn that because in this situation, Arthur is the dragon and you're the shit that's about to get burned by him.
Yeah. My thing is that like,
you're not dragons together. You, Bree, are not about to burn what was taken from you.
But he's trying to get her to, he's trying to threaten her. I don't think she's picking up on the fact that he's trying to threaten her. I think he thinks that he really has more pull than he thought. And I think it comes from a place of like, I'm Arthur Pendragon, but it's like, boy, I told everyone I was the Lion of Vera. So you're going to contend with my mama side? I don't actually care about you like that. Like, yeah, you're technically my mama side, but we don't F with you. Like, I F with my actual mama side, like not the F boy that you were that pulled yourself into my bloodline. Like, I got nothing to do with that.
Yeah. That's how chapter 22 ends. Just with Arthur reminding her, or trying to like really impress upon Bree that he ain't shit, he will never be shit. And she just leaves it with a like consistent,
Nick,
I don't trust this man, and he makes me feel a little bit icky, but
Nick though.
He is the key. Nick though, and also like he's the key. We have to work together. I'm like, did you not just learn this lesson?
Can we
from
get
the
your
Regent?
priorities together? Where do you think it's going to happen?
The Regent should have just taught you this.
What do you think is going? If it's not about the Regents, it's not about the Regents teaching her anything. Life should tell her to never trust making a deal with someone who lives in your subconscious, especially if he's a colonizing white man.
I mean, Maria tried to tell her.
Like, you got a colonizing white man living in your subconscious. You're going to try to make a deal? What are we doing? I can't. That is logic. That's not even like, that's not even high logic. That's not even like a 102 or 103 course. That is one-on-one bait. Might even be a 100. As someone, every time you get with them, they find the upper hand and they use it against you.
It's on the reading list.
It's not even, it's just
before you even show up to class. It's the summer work, my dear. Yeah,
and what makes it worse is basically like a review. It's like this has been something that's been taught to you your whole life. This should just be a review period for you. You should just be like reviewing your notes from all your years growing up and being like, I shouldn't make a deal with this person. And you weren't going to. But Nick?
It's like the inability to stop, breathe, and then think it through. And hormones. You know what? We've all, not all of us, but a lot of us have been subject to the havoc that they wreak. My thing about like the Regents is like just that it's like you're literally still escaping them from thinking that they were just this like gross impediment that you had to work around to finding out, like, oh no, they're actually an adversary. The same thing is happening, it's just happening inside of you. It's not working around. You can't work with this man.
And Imani is right. But Nick is an evergreen statement. You're not gonna consider the fact.
No,
you're not gonna consider the fact that you're gonna take your wall down for a white man, that colonizing white man that lives in your subconscious, for another white man. Like another white man has negotiated you into actually complying with the colonizing, dangerous white man. Does that not feel a little weird? Do you not feel a little concerned?
don't save her.
She don't want to be saved.
She don't want to be saved. I can't say nothing because we're about to go from that white man to
the other one. The other one.
He's my Cambian and I'm a stick. He's my white man.
The other white man. The other one.
And I'm a stick beside him. We are really about to reenact the conversation between Bree and Alice. Is going to be the conversation between me and Porshèa. It's the same dynamics. It may not be the same words, but it's the same dynamics. Okay, here we go. Bree wakes up, Sella's staring at her, and she's like, "So, this what we doing?" He's like, "Yeah." She tells him about her vision.
This is the perfect meme from Twilight where Edward is like watching over Bella as she sleeps. Like
he says he just got in there. He just stopped.
That's what he say.
He was getting read the riot act from Jill, and he just walked in when she happened to wake up. The force of his presence woke her up out of her dream, vision, whatever. Said, I walked in the room and you started to stir, and that says more about you than me, Brianna. So she starts to tell him about her vision and how she saw Nick, and he's like, I don't want to talk about something that was probably a dream. Are you sure it was a vision? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, no, you're not sure. Don't lie to me. Let's not waste time. Let's go off of facts and intelligence and gathered intelligence, I think is what he says. Like, don't waste my time, Brianna. She asked him about the cuffs. They are Scythian Guwak.
So before we get too far, I wanted to note that Brianna found something like so. That Bree has is recognizing that whenever she was transported into the memory, she was holding the Pendragon coin, and she's collating she's aligning the thought pattern that like there's blood on the coin, ancestors' blood, direction while dreaming, memory walk. Maybe she, because that was a Pendragon coin, she's aligning with Arthur's as in her ancestry as a dream in memory. So she was in a way able to invoke the memory that she went on, which when we know it's like also it's made possible, but also the fact that maybe she's acceptable to Arthur in her subconscious because of that, because Arthur wanted her to see that memory. And in my notes, I wrote that down as like the Pendragon coin is possibly to Bree what Mjolnir is to Thor, and that like it channels their like actual innate abilities. And they don't necessarily need them to do the things that they do, but it does channel their energy in a focused kind of way that like they feel like they need that ability to focus like in that way, or kind of like how wizards are with wands, or it's like that, like
yeah,
perhaps it's like the similar kind of relationship. I don't know if that's true or not, because we do know that Arthur really wanted her to have that memory, but it could be a thing.
Yeah, I think that she makes that connection, and I think that the relationship between Root and offerings and stuff is what I think it's a logical leap. I don't know that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing wrong with a talisman that helps you focus your
and
attention.
I enjoy whenever I see characters having theories about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, what is life if not, like, fan theories exist. Like, we know she's a nerd, she's into Star Wars, blah, blah, blah. But, like, sometimes it's nice to have your own theories about yourself,
Yeah. Yeah. So, back to Cell, my favorite topic. He calls these Scythian guactors void cuffs, and they block his ability to sense or call ether and like make it corporeal, to like use it to forge ether into like weapons. So he says that he is neutered, and that the cuffs can only be removed by the sorcerer who placed them, which is Erebus. But he still has his strength and speed, he says, which isn't enough to kill demons and makes him basically infantry. But as we see throughout the rest of this book, like it ain't nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't nothing. Bree immediately goes into being frustrated because Cell, she says Cell is keeping secrets from her, didn't tell her that the Regents were coming after him or that he would run, and then wonders why he didn't keep her in the loop after everything they've been through, and then goes, and after we, and kind of trails off, and she's like, after we what? After we what? And he's like demanding that she finish that sentence. She's talking about like, after you called me Cariad and you said that I was your king and you kneeled, and there was an uncomfortableness of possibility.
And I think that, like, another thing that I like this whole chapter, like, he mentions, like, they're basically gonna argue about this whole chapter. But one of the things that he like does, like, he like says sarcastically, is that, like, breaking news, secret mystery girl suddenly tires of secrets, which I enjoy. I get a little like sarcasm. But this whole time Bree is like annoyed at Cell, and I understand why. But I just feel like, as me being who I am, like a love interest calling me mysterious, I'd be enthused by that. I'm like, yeah, he thinks I'm a mystery.
Don't you just want to solve me? Don't you just want to spend all your time trying to
figure me out,
crack this code? I think what's so funny about the two of them, especially because we're coming off of a chapter in which she is with Nick, is that she's giving me ADHD vibes only within like her relationship with these two boys, as in like out of sight, out of mind type of thing, where she's with Nick and she's like, oh yeah, this is it.
When she was with Nick, she was like, oh, I've forgotten that, like, he can see to my gooey nougat center. Like, he can get to the heart of me so quickly. And I was like,
you forgot?
But is that really, but also, is that really what's happening? Like, is it just,
yeah,
is it just that he can read you pretty well, and he just like, and it sounds like most people can read Bree pretty well, but he's actually
pretty well. Yeah, it sounds like she's like, Cell might call you mystery girl, but she definitely gives like, it's all on her face, open book, she's definitely giving that vibe. I do think it sort of is what's happening, but she's mistaking a lot of their magical bond, and also just the fact that he knows what's up because he happened to be the person in which, like, she found out all this stuff. So it's not like she was keeping stuff from him because she ain't know to keep it, really. You know what I mean? I think when you're walking around, when she's within like the order, or when she's just at UNC, like, Nick is the closest to her after Alice and knows her the most after Alice because they infiltrated the order together. because they, you know what I mean? Like, she was like holding out secrets. No one can know that she does this, this, and this. But Nick knows because Nick's the one that told her, don't tell nobody else you can do that. You know what I mean? Like, Nick was
But
the
she
one
has
that was.
proceeded to tell anyone who gets, like, that's what I'm trying to say. Nick actually could, like, everyone can read her. They just may not know what, like, they might not know what she's able to do, but they can read her pretty well. Nick just happens to be the one who's like, I'm going to tell you about yourself because as I'm reading you. And it's like, because anyone else who gets close to her basically tells her about herself to herself. And she's like, oh, we're close now. Now I can tell you about my root. And it's like, girl, every time you get close to somebody, go tell them about your root. Like, you were just on a plane with these lieges, and you mentioned, like, just said it, just let it out. Mystery girl, Scorpio, mysterious girl. Come on.
Oh, Porshèa is over Bree's shenanigans.
Because if we're gonna be a mystery, let's give the girl some mystery.
Stop being an open book.
Stop it.
So I just love, like, the difference. Okay, so back to her having, like, kind of ADHD. So she leaves this memory with Nick, and it's like call and response, and we're here and whatever. To then go to Cell where they're just fighting, but it's like a sexually charged fight. There is like the chemistry, you know. It's kind of like what Bree is saying as she's like going through this with him. It's basically like we are just charged. But Cell's reaction to Bree isn't the like, you can do anything, you can, like, and I think he does believe that she's very highly capable, but it's also like, I think Nick comes at Bree with a sense of like awe and a little bit of worship and like pedestal, and Cell comes at Bree with, if you knew better you would do better type of energy, or like, you're capable of it, so be capable of it, and don't, what, do you want a fucking cookie? Like, do what you're supposed to do kind of energy. Say what you want to say, like, say it with your chest type of stuff. And so I think that Bree internalizes that as just Cell being, I mean, at one point she's like, why is he this way? Which is questions that need answers, and also evergreen statement, right? But to Cell, it's like, if you want to do this dance, if you want to ignore what's going on here because Nick is your one and only, or whatever the hell's going on over there, then fine, but leave me out of it. I'm not gonna be a puppy dog. I'm not going to, whatever. And the funny thing about this is because they're both in love with Nick. Nick's in love with both of them. Bree's in love with Nick and Fel. You know, like, it's a real triangle. It's like we've talked about. This triangle is forged in blood. Like, this is like, there's no holes. Okay? So Fel gets annoyed because she refuses to like say what it is. Like, what? You thought I owed you I owed you like my soul. I should have came, and I owed you my secrets. Basically, I should have came and spilled my soul and told you my plans. Because of why? Why would I do that? What is it about our relationship that makes me owe this to you? She refuses to answer, so he's like, fine, then I'm gonna move on. And so he tells her,
I forget what sign Cell is, but that's very whatever that is of him. Like,
I don't know what it is, but it's very that.
It's very that. I think it's an air sign, and that's why I'm just like, because like why would he like come in that way? Maybe it's Earth. Like, he's like, I'm gonna make you say it. Like, he dropped the clue about Carriat. He's been dropping like clues about how he feels, but then he's also like, I'm not going to admit to it outright until you admit to like you feel a way too. And I'm like, that's real. I get that.
He's born in June. What is that?
But what part of June? Because that's either
I
Gemini
know,
or
because I'm like,
I think it's
Cancer,
air. I think it
right?
might be Gemini. It's either
Yeah.
Gemini or
Apparently, you can get a birth chart.
I know that Tracy named which zodiac
Yeah, she
signs each of
did.
the.
It's Tracy. Cell is a June Gemini. Bree is a November Scorpio. Nick is a redacted.
Yeah, Scorpio. Yeah. I knew that was an air sign. I was like, and it feels like I know I have too many Geminis in my life for me to not like recognize. But I think that's the thing is that like whenever you're pushing for someone to just own up to their feelings, it's like usually like it comes from a place from, and again, like he said, like I said, he's been dropping hints, and I'm like, you got like, because you're trying to fill out and suss out if they feel like if they will own having feelings for you too, and you're like, I've put my foot out the door, and it's like, but have you? Because you've just been dropping hints, sir. You haven't actually full on like said how you felt. And it's like, who's going to make the first move? Who's going to actually like say what they're doing? And the fact that he's like, well, why do you think I owe you? Like, why would he frame it that way? Like, why wouldn't he just say like, maybe I was going through a lot. Maybe I just didn't have it the time or the like energy to like sit down and tell you everything about, what's going on with me. Maybe I thought it was better that you didn't know. Maybe I wanted to give you plausible deniability. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't he framed it in a way that has to make her own up for her feelings rather than in a way that was like, let me talk about like rational reasons or like logical reasons why I may have decided to not share these things about my whereabouts or whatever with you.
Yeah. I don't know much about what those signs. I mean, the zodiac. I have to read it every single time. I know that I am a ball of emotion, and because I'm a Cancer, and I cry a lot, and I'm exhausting, and that's all I know. And that's because my cousin Akira will never cease to stop telling me that.
So the Gemini, and that explains some things. He probably also has fire in his chart because him ripping apart trees. Yeah. Yeah.
Fine. I feel judged.
I'm a fire sign. I get like fire sign things. I'm like, you know what?
The problem isn't you being a fire sign. I feel like it's you being like the fire and the water. And your whole the octaves, and then the way your face went like this.
I don't know what to do with that, bro. I really don't.
Anyway, we still have the longest chapter to get to.
Yes, that's a tangent. We're not probably gonna keep all that in there. That could be a bonus. That could be a bonus part of like astrology with Wizard Tea.
That was a tangent.
Yes.
So
a bonus clip.
I love this part though. So like they're kind of going through the whole thing, and this is what I was like trying so hard not to spoil last episode. Come to find out that it was happening this episode. So Cell is like, she's like, you were like unfair, like you still came and you saved us, and like how dare they like arrest you? And he was like, I was gonna plead guilty because I am guilty to all of that. Cool, I saved you and then I got caught, and then what? So what? And she's like, but you're not, you're innocent. He was like, oh, you sweet summer child. They didn't even say that. He just basically called her stupid. He said, you dummy. He was like, starts naming off all the charges and how he's guilty. And he was like, and rest, like, best believe the charge of trying to kill you, I'm guilty as sin.
But that's the thing, is that like
them hell foxes saved your damn life because me and my hounds were about to take a pound of flesh.
Was he actually charged for for attempted murder of Bree?
Yeah.
I can't
Well,
remember.
he was charged. He says, I had to turn off all of my stuff. So
no,
I
I was
have to
talking about like
go
going back to the Regents chapters where they charge him. Like, was that one of the charges that the Regents read off to him? Was attempted murder of a scion? I can't remember.
It's not. He goes, negligence, guilty. I took oaths on my life to protect the chapter from any and all threats. He knew that there were threats and he didn't report them, which I think is like something that is very true. Like, but also, like, thank God you didn't report them because the Regents fucking suck. You're supposed to report them to the Regents. Fuck them. And then he says,
arguing with what he said. I'm like questioning how much of this is living in his head as guilt of like charges that he thinks that he should be suffering, and how many of them are actual charges that the Regents put against him. And I'm like, that would require me remembering which chapter that was in to read the charges that the Regents or that Erebus named against him.
So it's in part 1.
I know that much.
And he says, I hit something wrong. Chapter 11.
Wait. Okay. So Erebus admitted to fabrication of the charges against Cell when it comes to Lord Davis betraying the order.
Yeah, but he's talking about when they actually arrest him and put the cuffs on, when it's just them on that road after the
but that's whenever that's the only time we see Bree learn about Cell's charges, like his actual arrest charges.
Yeah, but so I went back, so it's in chapter 11.
Yeah, it's like
Selrin, Imris Kane. It's I'm gonna keep these page numbers as a grain of salt because I'm reading it on my phone, but I think it's page 114. You are now under arrest for 6 counts of negligence, 1 count each of gross negligence to your charge and to the crown, which is fucking charge padding if I've ever heard one, because the crown is Bree and his charge is Nick, even though when he was doing all this, whatever. 1 count of attempted murder of the scion of Arthur. So he says, so 6 counts of negligence. And then he says, gross negligence
1,
is
2, 3, 4. I'm counting as Cell is saying them in this chapter.
Yeah, he goes, why stop when I can keep going? 5 more lapses and judgment to go. So I think that one that he counts that as 1 count of negligence.
That I'm saying that they sat him in that whatever, like wherever he was arrested. They had him sitting in that cell, and he was sitting over there just like, you know what? Yep. And it's like, it's all guilt that he was holding already. And it just gave him time to sit there, and he didn't have his power. So he's just like sitting there moldering on like, I can't get out of here. And like, again, the indoctrination of the order, where he feels like the responsibility for all this stuff that is like, what were you like? You were supposed to do certain things, but you knew that like there was reasons why for you to not trust the Regents to an extent as well. So like, what were you really supposed to do? They put you in that position to have to make these poor decisions.
And so Bree responds, like, you weren't negligent. We were tricked. Even the Regents didn't see Davis's endgame. Nobody's seen a Gorcha like Raz in years. He fooled everyone. And like Cell, and this goes back to what Nick was saying about Cell's like almost unbelievable sense of duty and like the high standards he holds himself to, because he's like, Cell's like, that doesn't make it any better. That just means that I failed. Like, it doesn't matter that he fooled everyone. He wasn't supposed to be able to fool me, and he did. So guilty.
But also, like, he should not have been the only Merlin for a whole campus.
No. And I mean, I think we can hold both things, like, in a way that in which Cell and Bree can't, which is that yeah, he could be, he is guilty of some of these things, but also he's guilty of them because the system set him up for failure. In the same way in which, like, poor people are guilty of a bunch of crimes because the crimes are written
to
for poor
affect
people
them.
to just,
yeah.
Like, there's no way that you could not be guilty, right?
Yeah.
They're unjust laws in these cases. And he says, like, when Nick is taken, he goes, I was his king's mage and I failed to keep him safe within the lodge because I was distracted by you. Which I think is, like, the thing that, it's where I love Cell and his drama, but also I understand why everyone surrounding Cell is exhausted by him, because he is, like, disgusted with himself. It harkens back to when he figured, like, when he really accepted that Bree wasn't the Gorachel and wasn't the demon. He's, like, disgusted with himself that he allowed himself to be distracted by Bree. Partially, I think a lot of it is because the distraction that he wanted to blame on her being a demon was that she was making bits tingle that haven't tingled since Nick.
I'm like this. That's what I wrote down in my notes is that I'm like, he's mad because, like, his guilt comes from the fact that he knew that if he weren't divided in focus with his heart going pitter patter for this throuple ship and seeing the budding, like, romance part between Bree and Nick, he would have, like, his brain might not have targeted Bree as that or whatever. So he's like, I'm not only am I guilty of attempted murder of you because of my feelings, I'm also guilty of neglecting and, like, seeing the other signs because of you. And it's like you said, because we have perspective, it's like, it's not you, kid. You should not have been the only one. Like, you should have had someone to bounce this stuff. Like, I'm a better researcher because I have another researcher to talk to. Like, I can be functionally good at my job, but unless I have someone else to be like, you know what, I came kind of across this question and I'm, like, trying to figure out how to, like, go about it. I think I'm just gonna do it this way. And someone else was like, oh, but have you also thought about doing it that way too? I'm not gonna be good at it. I'm gonna be fine, but I'm not gonna be at a caliber that someone else is gonna be like, oh, that was
You're gonna
actually
be good,
well
but you're
done
not
work.
gonna be great.
I'm not gonna
Yeah,
be great.
and, like, things are gonna slip through.
Yeah, because I don't have someone else there to, like, catch me and check me or whatever. Like, that's anybody with anything. Like, if you have, like, especially if it's something that is like a report or something like that, unless you have feedback, like, you can be like, this makes a lot of sense in my head, and then someone picks it up and, like, and it's like, who are you trying to send this report to? Because I don't get it. And you're like, you know what? Maybe I needed those
Maybe I
notes
do need to
before.
dig a little bit deeper. Maybe I do
Yeah.
need to look at some alternative sources. Yeah. And I think that, like, I, like Bree, do not believe that, like, all of these Merlins are just subject to falling prey to demonia, or that demonia looks the way in which they
Are
subscribe
describing
it to look, are
Mhm.
describing it. But I do believe that having someone be so focused and terrified of demonia is very freaking distracting.
Yeah, it's like you're making people come up with, like, paranoia, and then you're gonna call
Yeah.
them, like, you're gonna use their paranoia that you invoked in them to use it against them. It's like hysteria with women in the 1940s, 50s, or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is hysteria? Oh, it's a woman disagreeing with you and you being like, well, this is how things are supposed to go, so I guess you have to have a lobotomy now. Like, that's what
Yeah.
hysteria is, basically.
A woman being like, this sounds
Mm.
like misogynistic bullshit. Well, you must be crazy. Okay.
So it's like, isn't that funny how that works? That's also like racism.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's racist. Is it? Is it? How would you know if it's racist or not? You do this.
Everything is racist to you because all you do is talk about racism. Or maybe because everything
Or
is
maybe.
racist.
Maybe.
It's all a mess. But I also think, even in this moment as well, Cell's preoccupation, I guess, with demonia, or, like, being very one, I think he's still also trying to grapple with the fact that his mother probably never suffered from it at all, and all of that was a lie. But also, he is depressed. Like, he is sad. He is deeply sad. He is deeply alone. He has been stressed out and left to carry this burden of keeping this chapter safe alone, which we all agree, like,
shouldn't be his burden.
Shouldn't be his burden. And the only way he's able to, like, really understand that is like that he failed, that he's guilty. And what I really think it is that he is tired. And so, yeah, he will happily say, like, I'm guilty, I'll take my punishment, because at least in my punishment I can nap.
It'll be all over. It's like it's the biggest nap, the greatest nap of life, basically. But sure.
But when you're that tired and when you're that depressed,
yeah,
it's a better alternative.
In your depressed
when you're in that headspace. And one thing I will say, you can agree, disagree, whatever, as someone who has been in those headspaces, is that I don't think that it's totally illogical. I do think that there are much better ways and other ways to, like, get your rest. But in these systems, sometimes, especially in a system that is like the Order, that is built on fear, threats, and placing unimaginable burdens on 17-year-olds, 19-year-olds, self 19. I don't think that it's illogical for him to have come to this conclusion. I do think, and the other thing I was thinking about too is, like, we were talking about, like, the agony and, like, what William's going through, but is there a term for what Merlins go through when their charges are in danger, or they feel like they failed, or, you know what I mean? Like, because even though he, like, admits that he has not sensed Nick in danger, he also knows that if he does sense Nick in danger, he can't do anything about it. He's not around. He doesn't know where he is to, like, fix it. So I'm assuming that in his own way, he's kind of also going through an agony of a sense. And the powers that be just label that as, like, demonia and, like, falling prey to his demon nature.
I want to read to you one of my favorite movies. I don't have a favorite. I have multiple favorites. And this is a favorite movie because it's a comfort watch, and I watch it, like, again and again all the time. I never really get sick of it. It's a speech by Drew Barrymore's character in Ever After when she goes to release a servant who gets, like, put in a cart to go work in the colonies. And I think this kind of, like, it sums up what we were saying earlier about, like, poor folk. And then it was reminding as you were talking, it was reminding me about what's happening in Canada with, like, the people who are choosing to, like do the, like, social euthanasia kind of thing or whatever, where they're too poor to continue. Like, the system is set up in a way that they are too poor to be able to maintain their healthcare costs. So people with disabilities are getting to a place where they're like, F it. I mean, at least it won't ever be a burden on the system, and I can no longer have to suffer from pain. I will just take that route out. And the Canadian government is like, well, we're doing the nice thing. We're doing the, like, solution thing right here. And it's like, but is it? And I think this speech gets to that, and also the state of depression that Cell is clearly in, and then also the place that those people who have those disabilities are in, and are choosing that route. And so in this, Danielle from Ever After says, a servant is not a thief, Your Highness, and those who are cannot help themselves. And then she elaborates, if you suffer your people to be ill-educated in their manners, corrupted from infancy, and then punish them for those crimes to which their first education disposed them, what else is to be concluded, sire, but that you first make thieves and then punish them?
Yep. I haven't watched that movie in forever, but
it goes. I'm here for a girl who loves to read, and it goes the whole way.
check. And then my favorite part, because this is where I really relate to Bree. Bree is like, well, you saved me in Lark, so that should count for something. Call yourself guilty all you want to, but I'm giving you time off or time served for good behavior, because at the end of the day, you're on the right. No harm, no foul. I'm still alive. Nick's still alive somewhere, being a damsel, but he's still alive and kicking. And then Jillian comes in and basically is like, get over yourself. I feel like Jillian and Sel were having this argument while Bree was in the
slumber,
the vision with Nick, and he didn't want to hear someone else be like, you know, they made you into a thief. They made you into a thief, and now we're trying to punish you for being a thief. Pull it together, get over yourself. So he went to go stare at Bree while she was asleep, and she woke up and said, no, absolutely not. Bree tells Jillian about her memory walk, and then Jill says that she will reach out to the Liege Network and look into it, because there are, like, the fact that, like, there are probably either 2 hurt mage guards, like seriously injured mage guards that got injured on the East Coast somewhere, or 2 dead and missing mage guards is something that they do not know about. And then she does tell them, like, they're landing soon, and they're going to go to a safe house in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, off of everyone's grid. And that's kind of like where this chapter ends. No one giving Sel what he wants, which is like you're right, you're guilty and you should burn.
I don't know if I don't even know if he fully wants that. I feel like
I don't know what
whenever and I don't know that, like, I've been diagnosed depressed ever, but sometimes when you're really just reeling from all the emotions and you're in just like a dark spot, you're looking for a spark, anything to keep you going. And I feel like in a previous, like in Legendborn, we've seen that spark be like Sel being like, those is fighting words, let's fight, like, kind of thing. And so, like, I think he's looking for someone to, like, spark him up again, you know, like something to get him out of where he is currently in his headspace. And that might be like yeah, you're right, but also it could be like he's just like,
well,
I need something.
I think mostly what he wants is, for what he's kind of getting, is like to go after Nick. He wants, like, he needs something to do and to feel useful. But I also think that this is something about depression, as someone who is clinically depressed, he's not healthy enough yet to want to let go of the guilt. Like, there's sometimes when you are depressed, there is, like, I don't know how else to explain it except to say, like, a comfort in, like, I recognize these emotions. Like, even though they're shitty emotions, I feel comfortable in this, and I'm not ready to let go of it into the unknown or into feeling hopeful or optimistic. I've got on the, like, stretchy pants, the indoor clothes. I've been wearing these pajamas for 3 days now. Like, everything has, like, settled, and I am used to this, and I am not ready to let it go for something new.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like he wants to release from it, but I think it's like he wants someone to distract, like how Bree likes to be distracted. He's looking for a distraction. He's looking for someone to spark his distract. Because again, he never really, like, this whole, like, Legendborn, the whole time we've known him, he's been in this, like, this not happy place, but he allows for the fight to distract him from the non-happy place that he's been in this whole time.
And I think that's kind of like one thing that he's definitely trying to do with Bree is, like, either you're going to acknowledge what happened between us and we can, like, confront that, or we're going to continue to just, like, fight. But we're not going to fight about whether or not I'm guilty. I don't want to talk about that.
Because I know I'm guilty.
Yeah, but we can fight about carry on what we're going to do with Nick about the fact that you have been and will always be Arthur. Like, we could fight about that stuff. We can go make a plan to go save Nick, but we're not rehashing or recounting all of the many ways I failed. Because I think in his brain, even though Bree is trying to tell him that he's not a failure, she's also just recounting all of the ways in which he has failed.
In his brain.
That's what he's hearing in his brain. So, my poor babies, my poor beans.
Okay, so we land on the airstrip. Everyone else just jogs off, jolly, good time. Bree, who is used to being a person who can either at least keep or set a pace, is moving slowly and feeling it. Like, not happy about her lot in life. And I understand whenever I have a speed I like to maintain when I'm walking around, especially in the city. I don't want anyone getting too close to me. I don't like it. So I like to zoom in and out. When I'm off my game of being able to like just zoom in and out of like where I am on the sidewalk, I feel like, what is happening? Am I a problem? Do I need to get over that? Sure, but it still doesn't feel right. And it reminds me of this story about like my former coworker. Her mother was like a born and bred New Yorker, was in her 80s, and they were going to like a bookstore signing. And as they were on their way there, the mother had a walker and was like moving, but she's moving slowly. And she's seen people go around her and past her. And she's like, oh no, I've lived long enough to become the person that I hated. Younger years as a New Yorker. And I'm like, oh no, that is such a sad fate. And so I feel like Bree's kind of like in that headspace of like, I know why I'm in this state, but I don't like it. Like, don't feel right. And as she's like going at this slow pace, she's like, she sees Samara still on the plane, so she decides to talk to her. And she looks out to see Alice be like, looking up at her like, are you good? Like, I see you left back. Are you good? And Bree's like, no, I'm cool. As soon as Bree gives Alice the I'm cool face, Alice goes to what she was about to do in the first place, which is talk with Jill or Gil about some guns. Because Alice now has trigger fingers.
I want to tell you, Alice is like, I mean, and Bree says, like, you scary girl. But Alice has taken this paramilitary, this like, we about to fight to a whole nother level. She said, I may not be able to see the demon, but I can see these regent motherfuckers clearly. I can see these mage guards. I may not be faster than them, but are they faster than bullets?
You know what I do got? Hands.
I'm gonna keep that thing on me. Like, her level of ride or die should be studied. This is how you know this is a work of fiction. This is a 16-year-old girl being like, I'm gonna just let the chopper spray.
Is that unreal? Is that fiction? Because I know plenty of, like, when you hit 16, it just sounds like a good day to let the chopper spray, honestly.
Maybe I should just say, like, can't relate.
And you know what I was about to say? I'm like, Alice might be a fire sign.
Definitely. And like, I could let like my mouth go. Like, I can, I could talk a good game. I could be in the back of the van of the beast, the armor plated vehicle. I could be in the back with my seatbelt on, being like, "That's right, motherfucker," like in the back. I am not trying. No. She means business.
Oh, May 14th. She's a Taurus. Taurus be kind of snappy sometimes. Like, I'm thinking about Eliana. Eliana would pull a blicky.
You know what? Yeah. Absolutely.
Eliana would do it.
Absolutely. And I would also be like, Eliana, how many times?
But also, like, maybe her Mars is in, like, Aries or something, because that is, like, some real, like, decisive action. Boom, boom. Like,
she gave Bree a look. Bree gave her a nod, and she said, "All right, about these guns now.
Let me get back to my trigger fingers." So Bree takes this moment to talk to Samara because she's like, you know what? This is the only time I've seen another Black person in relation to the Order. And I'm going to take advantage of this moment before it's gone. And, that's real. I appreciate her for, like, being there. And when she starts, she's like, I don't know how to start this conversation. Somebody's going to start with the most obvious thing. So she asks Samara, so you know how this, how it is that I ended up being the sign of Arthur, right? And Samara's like, yeah, girl, I'm sorry about that. Like, but, everybody, all the lieges have been talking about the fact of how you got here. And I just thought when Samara confirmed that not only, it's like one thing that like Bree's been like not so secretly sharing her rootcraft information with people, but like the whole of the Legendborn people you've never met before, people you've probably never seen before, are talking about your ancestry that you just learned about because you're the sign of Arthur now, and everybody's like, well, how will you figure that out? And it's just like, ain't that fun? When everyone is discussing the rape of your ancestor, ain't it quaint?
Ain't it fun living in the real world? But I do think that like like as soon as you find out that this Black girl who no one knows is the sign of Arthur, and her family,
you're gonna have questions. You're gonna want the answers.
I'm gonna have questions, but I feel like it's like it's not
that big. It's not that hard to understand. Yeah, it's not. It really isn't. But the fact that this is the fact that everybody's talking about
it.
Everybody's talking about it. It's just like, well, that's great. That's nice. Because it's supposed to be a secret too. Like they're supposed, like the regents are supposed to be holding the actual sign of Arthur a secret from most of the Order. So like, which leaders are these? Like, it's a lot. And so commences the conversation about Blackness within the Order between the two of them. So what it boils down to, as Samira talks about how like she wasn't the first page, nor was she the first squire necessarily. But the fact of the matter was that she was the first squire to squire for someone who was likely to get called at the Northern chapter, who was the person who was like sixth in line. And she could tell from her peers' reaction in the Legendborn that nobody was prepared for a Black person to actually be in line to be able to have powers, because her parents were
that high.
That have powers, just to have powers, period. Because no one had ever made it to squirehood for someone who had powers that was likely to get called. Like that had never happened before. So like her parents were vassals, and vassals are just like people who like kind of buy into like being part of the Order's network. But you don't have to be part of the Legendborn or anything like that. You don't have to try out if you don't want to. And so the fact that she went that far and then made it that high, people were unprepared. And it really took a death to happen on their chapter and her to survive it with her scion, and come back with that other person's body for them to like, for her peers to like recognize and respect her. But it still didn't dissuade their parents and the rest of the chapter from being bigots towards her. So she won on one hand, but she like didn't really an overarching picture of it all. And as Bree's like kind of like taking that in and being like understanding like the history of Blackness within the Order, she's also pushing Bree's thinking about like, well then like, what about how I'm like, not only like are you holding power, did you hold power for that limited period of time? I'm now the sign of Arthur. Like, what does that actually mean to this all? How does this all happen? And Samira pushes Bree to live longer in the why. Like there's probably a bigger picture here than what you're like actually thinking about than in the how. And like the fact that what has happened is that Bree has like in this moment has broken a centuries-year-old glass ceiling. And there's probably a reason, like there's a why behind it all. And she pushes Bree to think about more about the why. And as Bree's sitting in that, and she's like considering the fact that like how Samira is talking to her is very like warmly, Bree, and like Bree recognizes, and then she starts feeling her own guilt carrying over from Cell's guilt, like last chapter, for not considering the existence of Black Order members before she became part of the Order, or even as she was like in her trial, and what her representation may mean to the Black Order members. Because she was, in her time as she was being part of the trial, she felt super lonely there, and she didn't even like actually think about the fact that like there might have been Black Order members who'd gone through it before her that she could have called on, and she feels guilt for like, I'm just as guilty as these white folks in a way because I erased you from possibility. And Samira reminds her that not only are the people who are outside on the tarmac people who believe in her, not just because of who she is, being the sign of Arthur, but also because what they believe in her ability to do with the power. Like they believe in her and her as a person and what she would do. And this is also a reminder of who Bree is. Like, not only is she someone who could pull Excalibur from the stone, which is like how Bree kind of derides it, and like, girly, yes, I do the same thing. Overachiever, oh, anyone can do this. It's not a big deal. I just happen to do it. And so it's like, shut up. Not only are you a sword puller, you are a sword. You are the sword of your family line. You are the like weapon turned wound. Weapon turned wound again. Is that this is like, what is this, like the three-peat of us like getting into this like this thought. And she's also the sword of like, you know, the Black Order member sword. She's also the Order sword, if they would get their butts together, right? But most importantly, she's her family sword, and that really hits Bree's heart. It makes her like emotional and cry. And Samira kind of insinuates that, like, let me just read it. I'm trying to summarize as much as I can so that we're not sticking here too long.
While you're finding it, I wanna just like mention the fact that when Bree is talking about, or like kind of feeling bad that she didn't consider the existence of other Black Order members, and like that what her representation means to them, it reminds me a lot of like how we felt with like, and I say we as in like the diaspora, with like Meghan Markle, where it was like, I don't care about this institution.
Monarchy, yeah.
I don't give a damn.
Mm-mm.
Not interested. Haven't really thought about it. But then you see someone like Meghan Markle, like with the pomp and the circumstance, and it like means something to you.
Mm-hmm. It means like, and the meaning too is more of like, sometimes it's like, it depends on where you sit. Like if you sit on the, like, you haven't really dissected like where you sit on white supremacy from you, then there might be like, and there are Black folk that sit there, right? Then that's a certain kind of sitting. And then there's other, like on my angle, it's more of like, stick it to the man, put some color up in there, wreck their lives, out them as bigots. I love it. Have the UK press have to run around and try to figure out how to blame stuff on you whenever it really is them falling apart because they can't blame the Black lady now. Like, do it all. And like, none of that is Meghan actively doing anything. But just having half Blackness, just her mother walking around with them long locks is enough to have them all falling apart, and we love it. Like, bring the monarchy down by just being Black. We love it so much. It's so
and like, it's, to me, it's like, this institution is nonsense. Yeah. This institution is a farce. And your existence in it just means that like there is no, I still want to burn it down. I still don't think it should exist, but there is also no levels, no gates, no anything that you can keep us out of. Even if we didn't even want to be in your funky club, you can't keep us out.
And we're getting like, the fact that Meghan has better press just being herself than Kate ever could wish, and y'all really try to shove that white woman down our throats like we were gonna care. Y'all was sitting on television saying she's the most beautiful person in the world. Girl.
And that, like, and then that Megan just walked away in the same way that Bree is just like, no. Sitting at the order being like, you're going to take this oath? No. Because we don't want it. I want you to know that I could be here. I deserve to be here. I mean, everyone deserves it. It shouldn't exist. But, like, if it is going to exist, everyone should be able to open the door and be here. Actually, in reality, I don't want it. I don't want your funky shit.
You're sounding both parts.
Your dry ass sandwich and apple. Okay?
We don't want your infidelity covered up with whatever. You overthinking you would like to be a tampon in somebody's body. We don't want that.
We don't want that.
No, we don't want it. But I it's funny because you both sound like Katie Haring from Mean Girls, where she's like breaking the crown. Like, we all deserve a piece of the crown, right? But at the same time, you sound like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, where she's like, yeah, big mistake. Like, that's huge. That's what it is. So the point that I was getting to with Samira is that, like, whenever she's talking to Bree, she says, you know, just so you know that the Liege networks are a bit more worldly than the regions realize. They have always been with the work that we do, and we have our own contacts that are off the regions and the Seneschal's radar. And Bree's like, I thought everyone and everything were on their radar. And Samira admits that it used to be true when the world was different. Basically, when like social media and all this, like all these ways to communicate with other humans in other parts of the world were not available. But now that it is, the order surface networks tend to run down certain avenues, and they kind of like stay that way because that's how they maintain power. But we deal with the world as it is, so that some of our channels are a bit more underground than others. An allusion to, based on what I've heard about your other abilities, I think you'll know what I mean when I say that in this part of the country, roots run deep. And Bree's a little startled and then looks at her, and when she winks, Bree says, "Are you?" And her eyes twinkle as she passes Bree a folded note and says, "Not me, but a couple of aunts, some cousins. I'm sure you understand why I don't share that information with anyone in the order, not even Jill/Gil, however they're pronouncing it." Mm-hmm. "Yes, of course," Bree says, and she pulls up the edge of paper to open it, but when she looks at whenever Samira makes a negative sound, Bree closes it in her hand instead and then hides it. Samira then leaves her with, wherever you go, things are going to get dangerous. If you need some resources or help outside of the lines, I want you to use this information. Just be careful about who you share it with, understand? And Bree says completely, "Thank you." Then Samira pulls her into a hug and says, "Black folks don't need oaths to take care of each other. We never did."
I need you to know that in my Kindle edition of this book, I highlighted that and said, period. And that was my note.
And I was like, yep, Samira's a real one. Because, like, and so we know that, like, you know, William passed Alice the Liege network thing, but this is, like, even more culturally contextual, like, passing of things. And, like, owning, like, where it is in your family. And Samira did not have to, like, share any of that.
No.
So it just like, and it comes like at just the right time when Bree's at her lowest kind of like morale, kind of basically, that Samira's like, you're not alone. Not only are you not alone in the order, but you're not alone in being part of the order and understanding there's a greater shape and curve to how this all works. So when Bree gets down to the platform, she meets the liege that they're going to be going off to, Jonas, who is like a silver fox, but is very kind of gruff. As they're on their way to the safe house, what we found out about him is that Jonas runs safe houses. But it's like, to me, it's a little unclear. And I guess it's kind of clear in the fact that like, if he's running around using order money, then it must all be for the order. But I'm like, how safe are they if it's a known safe house to the order? Is it that they just like that he has put some of the order money aside to be extra safe houses to be off the grid?
I think it's brilliant because I think the way in which the regents think, they don't know about I would hope, they don't know about the Liege network as separate from them, right? So they think if Jonas has someone in the safe house, he's going to let us know. If the Crown Scion shows up at the safe house, he would call it in. So the fact that he isn't calling it in, they just feel like it's empty, right? Like they would go to Jonas and say, is anyone using the safe houses? That's like your thing. And he'd be like, no, haven't seen a thing. I also love it.
But then what happens if they're like,
using
we want to
the
use
resources of the Regents to hide from the Regents?
Yeah, but that's my question.
That.
Is that like, what happens if someone wants to like is Jonas the only one with knowledge of where the safe houses are? Because that would make sense to like, if that's why Bree and them are safe, is because like even the Regents and other members of the Order don't really know where the safe houses are, and so Jonas takes them there. Like, he's the only route in or out of to a safe house, because then that would make sense of like why they like the Regents couldn't just be like, oh, we need to like, you know, double up our guard or like go like do more routine checks around a safe house just in case something is happening. That was my question, is like, what if like how safe, why is she safe in the situation, basically?
From my extensive knowledge of safe houses and safe house networks, from, you know, all the fiction that I inhale, he would be the one who knows where all of the houses are, in the way in which he would like call a number and be like, I'm here, and then they would like route you to the nearest safe house.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would happen is like, once you've used that safe house, then he has to go procure another one.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know by nature of, and it might be that like this used to be used as a safe house, and then so they would assume that it's already like off the record or something like that. So I would assume that like it's regional too. Like he wouldn't have like all of, like he would just be like the Georgia safe house guy, or maybe like the Southern safe house guy of like the last, like, you know, a couple of states or something. Or he could be like the guy, and then he would just route you to it. And so the fact that he's like here, because we kind of see him, he's like rooting around. He hasn't really been here either. So like, it's not like he's like, this is his house, right? So the fact that he's the one showing it to them means that like, if, for example, like the mage guard that found Nick and them, if they are like, okay, we need a safe house to have recuperate in, where's one nearest to us, he would never divulge the one in which they're staying in. He'd send them somewhere else.
Yeah,
that's how I would read it.
Cool. Well, she rudely, like in a very teenager way, Bree is eyeing Jonas's like silver hair and then questioning her lifespan. She's like, this man has all grays. Oh man, what does that mean for me and my friends in 20 years? Oh man, I need to stop thinking about that, because I don't want to think about how everyone is close to dying. All the adults around me in the last 24 hours are probably going to die soon because of abatement. So that's like a whole funny thing that I thought was like going on with Bree's head. And then they're on, when they finally reach the safe house, which is in the middle of nowhere. And mind you, like all the lieges that Bree started this journey with, Samira, Jill, Lysa, Ophelia, they all got back on the plane. So the only person that they're with who has authority here is Jonas. And the safe house has only 2 bedrooms, and they end up segregating themselves by gender. And so Sel and William get one room, and Sel chooses that room by just like, I feel like Sel did this deliberately. He went to a room, he looks in it, he's like, okay, and then he walked out to the woods. And then the other room is the larger room that looks like the grand suite of the house, and so that's the one that, because it has an ensuite shower and bathroom. So Alice and Bree get that one, and I was like, look at Sel being considerate of like Bree having the ensuite.
But also doing it in such a like bratty way.
Yeah, of course, because that's the only way to move. And I just wrote this down as like Sel running to his almost happy place, which is the woods.
Trees.
The poor trees. And then
I gotta get up high.
And then William is like, I'm gonna run to the shower, so I'll see y'all. So that leaves Alice and Bree. Alice just like like shows her boots off and then runs. They're just like, well, doesn't even run, just like flops down on the bed. And Bree is struggling to even get her shoes off. She's in a bad way from the like after effects of the serum and her exhaustion and all of that. When she is laying down with Alice, they start to talk about the Order's gene therapy machinations and why Bree is suffering at the hands of the serum and how that came to be, and like the wealth of like information and network and money that the Order has had to make this sort of serum against the Legendborn without their knowledge. They also talk about the cult craft of mythology times misinformation plus romanticism, like how the Order has been able to kind of create this cult following by crafting this like idea of like a mythos behind like the Arthur legend, and giving the people who are serving this legend enough misinformation to keep them involved, but also giving them misinformation in a way that's very romantic and makes them feel like heroes and part of the larger story. And all the while creating gene therapy to suppress their genes and ability to like even use those genes in the first place. And Bree, when she hears how Alice has been just like thinking through and talking through and getting this information about the Order, she's like, do I get a little bit scared of Alice? Because not only is she ready to have these trigger fingers, but she's also breaking stuff down and like so in a way that's scary and scarily like close to how the regents talk. And from there, we get a little dissection of how, just like a little summary of how Alice has become a bundle full of surprises, of like combat ready surprises. She has, one, was helpful in planning Bree's rescue. She also was able to dismiss the mesmer that she's supposed to have had on her. She also was very enthused about guns. And right now, as she's having a conversation with Bree and Bree's contemplating this, she is over here hype about getting iron knuckles because it helps with aether. Like iron helps disrupt aether, and just like super and like excited to tell Bree all about how she got them and like why they're useful to her. And Bree is like, "What? Who are you?" And I wrote this off as like, and again, Wu Clint ain't nothing to F with. Alice Shin ain't nothing to F with. Like that is what she has decided to land on.
I love that Bree is like, I don't know what's going to happen after this, or like what is going on. And I know that she's not like technically eligible, but Lord help us if Alice Chen became a regent. She'd be great at it. She said, "Oh, you were down in like William's little thing, studying and researching," and I was like, "That's cute. Look at Alice being invested in what's going on in my life." But I didn't realize you were making plans.
My bad. I didn't realize I was rolling with a gangster. That's
She said,
on me.
"I'm so sorry. I was unfamiliar with your game."
Right.
No, I should have been. We besties, but damn.
What's funny is this is reminding me, you'll appreciate this is a sports reference. This is reminding me of people's TikToks of like people being familiar with Steph Curry's game, but having been like on the for rooting for teams that he's been going up against, they've been on the side of like, man, F Curry, like that side. So now that they're like been able to root for him because he's been part of Team USA, they're just like, yo, now I know what it feels like to be on the side of like rooting for Curry. And it's like, I'm sorry, I was not familiar. Like, I had not had the opportunity to be a fan of Curry before. And now that I do, I recognize why y'all are so obnoxious about this man, because that is thrilling. That is.
It is exciting to be on his side.
This is some energy that I wish I was. This is what y'all having. This is how y'all been eating. Y'all been eating like this. No, when y'all call him Chef Curry, okay, all right. And that's how she's like, okay, Alex, all right. I'm a little scared, but okay. And not only is she enthused about these iron knuckles, she's also revealing very enthusiastically, like with a gleam in her eyes, to Bree, that she's also packing a miniature demon blicky, like one of the things that took out the Merlins at the Institute. She's like, it doesn't have the same range, but it do what it do, and I got it on me. And Bree's just like, what? So like in my mind, I was like, okay, I'll get there in a second. I'll say it in a second. So Bree's like, okay, but like you do recognize that Cell's also a Merlin, so we probably need to be careful with that around him. And Bree's like, Cell? I mean, Alice like, Cell? The same man who's a jerk face, the same man who has like is scary looking, the same man
who was yelling at you on the plane. I heard that. We all heard that.
The same man who I've heard all these stories about, and ain't none of them painted him in a good light. That Cell? And it's so funny because like Bree's reaction gave me Belle from Beauty and the Beast. Like she's like, I'm very sensitive about people talking about the way that my beastie looks, you know? And meanwhile, Alice is just judging a book by its cover, but also his actions, his murderous actions. And she does not fail to bring that up. She's like, he tried to murder you, girl. Like he was ready to commit murder on you. Murder. Not like a little bit of a little. And I don't know that Bree told her why she came home with demon gunk in her hair finally. Like I don't know if she like actually like told the whole story about how there was a whole demon that was smashed against a tree, and then Davis made a thud in the same like night. I don't know that she ever really got there with Alice, but like if
William probably did though. William been putting Alice up on game.
Alice is like, that man is a murderer. And the quicker you recognize, the better for the both of us. And in the same way that she's talking this way about Cell, she's like, and I appreciate that whenever you had your little dream talk with Nick, that man seems to I've never met this man, but he sounds like he actually understands you as a person. And I'm like, okay, Alice, let's not give too many points to Nick either. And so it's very funny, like where Alice's like possible allyship lies within the triangle. But it was just really funny. And then Alice is like, and let's not forget, like, not only is he a murderous, beastly, scary, terrifying looking, like, demon person, he's also a grade A jerk. Like, there's nothing about his personality that is fun, that is cool, that is nice, that is easygoing, that is kind. Like, I just don't see it. And Bree's just sitting there like, I'm gonna just have to chew on this. Like, it's not that bad though. Like, it's not. She's just like whispering on the side. It's like you're not gonna beat the allegations right now. You got to keep going. So they get into like Alice being able to break the mesmer, and Alice is like, "This is my theory, okay? You remember when you came out of your memory walk and your healer ancestor is able to heal me? My theory is that since you were on top of your medium gain and your ancestor is able to work through you, that has become a thing where it's become my immunity as well. I now share the same immunity that you have because you were able to transfer that on to me." We talked about this last episode because Bayana did bring it up.
Yeah.
And we were all like theorizing. If you want to go back, we all have our theories. I don't want to like put us back down that road of our different theories of what Alice possibly holds, but do see last episode for more of our pod theories of like what Alice may actually have. This is just one theory out of, we have like at least 2 or 3 more ourselves, and probably like so many more theories on the internet.
And this is still a theory. Like, this is Alice's theory. Yeah. It's not set in stone. So she could be right. She could be wrong. But
right. And I love when an author puts out their they put out things with the character, and you're like, this isn't actually like confirmed. This is just the thing that we're postulating, right? Like, this is like how this character is perceiving this thing. So we won't know until we get confirmation. And then finally, they get into a discussion about the strength of Bree's rootcraft based off of like this theory that Alice has. And Alice, like, positing this theory takes Bree to a place of like, you know what? because Al says like maybe you can find out if this theory is like accurate if you actually go and talk to one of your ancestors, if you talk to Vera. And Bree's like, I mean, sure, but now that you say it, you're actually, it's like, this is a very Keenan and Kel situation where Keenan is like, Kel says one thing and Keenan's like, now you're talking. And Kel's like, I don't think I said all that. This is where Bree goes. Bree's like, now that you talk about it, talking about getting ready for combat, how about I go talk to my ancestors, possibly about your little theory, sure, but also about me being ready for battle with my powers of rootcraft, because I don't know how to do that. And I've been trying to figure out how to do it on my own, but you're right. I need to ask my ancestors. And that's where we end in the chapter. And so both Bree and Alice like popping up on this like combat mission mindset, to me, put me in a like, I'm like, should I call them? Should I just like label them in this moment battle ready besties?
Is that the title of the episode? Because I think it is. Let me just write that down right here, right now. I was very excited that I came up with one in the 16 seasons of this podcast. I mean, we've only been coming up with episode titles for the last like three-ish, but yeah. Porshèa, battle ready besties.
Battle ready besties.
Battle babes. I love the way in which Bree is both visibly and actively excited for Alice and visibly and actively scared of her, and tells her both. So, ooh, child, I'm scared of you. But yeah, who's your MVP?
My MVP. So I had to like Alice for her everything that she's been given. Like I just, again, if I feel fire sign energy, I'm gonna align with it because I can't help it. I love it.
Did you just tell me your bestie?
That water though.
But you said
But and then also some like, but I so like Alice, and like we can talk more about Alice because I feel like it's the obvious, so I'm naming her first. But Samira, I have to give her props on it. I don't think that we're gonna really have that many more moments with Samira, so I wanted to give it to her whenever I seen it because she really could have not. And I think it was Bree coming to her, like Bree seeking her out, and not the opposite thing happening, that actually made her be like, this girl really does want to be connected. She really does need this little extra thing. And I see her mental state, like how choked up Bree was getting about just the idea of her like owning her power, that Samira is like, you know what, while I'm here, let me put you on game. Let me get you connected to some folks. My folks, even like my family folks. And I'm like, I really like Samira didn't have to do that at all. And I love that she ended that off with like, we don't need any oaths to take care of each other. We've been doing it. And I'm like, if that ain't the scripture, if that ain't the word, and that's true that like looking at the order, they're not even taking care of each other like that. They're just like in the game for the game of it, for the like wealth of it, for the power of it. Where is the care? And I really appreciate that for Bree, and I love Samira. Like if she can have Dr. Hartwood to be that position for her, an older Black person helping her like think through things, I love that she's finding that somewhere, and I'm glad that Samira is that person, because like she could be a whole different indoctrinated order person, and she's not. She could be even a halfway aligned one. She could be like be on this mission but still believe in like only talking about the magic that the order represents, and she's not. So I F with it heavy. And then we can go to Alice.
That's my MVP. I will say too, to give additional props to Samira, I don't think that these Black people are the majority, but they exist. And it is the I have entered this institution, and I am okay being the only one. And sometimes, like, I relish it. Like, that's where you get, like, the Tim Scotts and like, the people who, like, get up in like, the higher levels of the GOP, and they're totally fine not only being a token, but then they're actively hostile to other Black folks because they relish their position as the token, and they take pride in being the only one. Again, I don't think that that's, like, the majority, but they exist. And in spaces like something like the Order, that's who you kind of expect to see when you come across it, right? Because it's like, why are you here? You know, like, I feel
You
like
saw them cuffs in the museum of the lodge, just like I did.
yeah,
Why
and
are you
I feel
here?
like a part of Bree is like, do you have a dead mother who you were trying to figure out what was going on too? Because otherwise, oh, why is you here? But Samira not being like that, and also, like you said, like, she didn't have to put her connection to Root on the line and expose that to Bree, just really, like, solidifies that, like, we never needed institutions to take care of each other, and we are rooting for everybody Black, and that is,
For the most part,
that's
we're not rooting
right.
for the ones that be on top echelons of
Yeah.
Fox, but we do.
We rooting for them to see the light.
We're rooting for them ancestors to get to them at some point. We're rooting for their ancestors to pop them real good one time.
Yeah, get them one time for me. But yeah, we not about it. So I do want to say that. So I made Alice my MVP. A lot of, for, like, what you said, for the, like, her just dedication to the craft of Ride or Die. She said, Bree, you were gone for 6 days. We had to plan a rescue. While we were planning a rescue, I thought, I need to learn how to punch some bitches.
Some
And then I got these
some magicians.
Mm-hmm. And then I got these handy dandy iron like knuckles. And then I finessed my way into this Mage Guard takedown button. And then I was like, well, while we at it, why don't you slide me a couple of blickies? Like, you know, like, stay ready so you don't have to get ready type nonsense from Alice over here. Couldn't be me.
It might be Eliana.
It might most definitely. But I appreciate, like I said, the dedication to the craft. Chelsea in the chat also MVP Samira, and Bayana didn't leave her MVPs and benches, so we're gonna have to ask her about that another time. Who did you bench?
I benched the usual, because Arthur subjects, the usual suspects. Dud Davis, because how dare you want to murder Bree now because of your own inadequacies and incompetence in your family line? Of course. Am I surprised? Not at all. Because what is white mediocrity without having a Black person to make the villain? We see you.
Scapegoat.
No, yep. Get out of here, dead. The regents for this whole situation, just buy. The only good you do is spread money around, so now that we can take advantage of you. But generally, I like in this chapter, in this like episode, the way that everything is framed in reaction to their bad policy, their bad actions, them being bad actors, the fact that like Cell is not able to be his full powered self and is in a deeper state of depression than he was in, that he started off with already, is because of Erebus having the cuff thing on him, and the fact that the Regents put all this responsibility on this man, and he thinks that this is the way he should think. He thinks this is the accurate way to understand the world. F the Regents for all of that. And then also Arthur, because you're holding back powers and being not only an opportunist, you're being exploitative. of where you sit in Bree's subconscious. And ain't that about a colonizing white man? And I'm tired of it all. So Arthur needs the bench, the Regents need the bench, and Dud needs. They all, and you know what's real interesting? Most of them white men. Ain't that surprising? Ain't that curious?
Curious. Surprising? No.
No.
From what I know of the world, that seems pretty spot on.
The money.
On brand. I had to just go with Arthur. Like, I agree with everything that you just said. And then it just ended with, Arthur, you are the reason for the season. Because
But now you sound like Dud. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I
Nick.
know.
Now you sound like Nick.
Now I sound like Nick. It's not just him. But I just feel like the moment he was like, summon me, and I will help you use my power to talk to your little boyfriend. I was like, you low down there. The ego, the hubris. You caused all of this with your damn spell of eternity bullshit and your damn ancestors. No, absolutely not.
When Bree says she hasn't received an apology, she's talking about a real apology, because like Arthur did say, like, I'm sorry about how that happened, but he didn't actually say like an actual apology. He just said,
he said, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I don't have nothing to do with that, because I was
unconscious, I wasn't awakened, I got nothing to do with that.
I was in Camland or Camelot. I was in Camelot.
You see this? I'm an innocent baby. I don't know nothing about that.
It's just it ain't had nothing to do with me. Sorry that happened to you though.
And while we're at it, I'm not gonna let you have my powers. You gotta actually pay for those. So where do I make out my check to? My invoice? Where do I send my invoice?
And then I'm gonna threaten you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna take it as a threat, because you sweet naive baby.
You have too many threats. You have too many physical threats to you right now that you're not contemplating your subconscious threats.
You're not picking up on the subconscious threats, but it was a threat.
It was a threat. I promise, actually. So, you know.
Of all the things you could be.
Brother,
You decide to be the worst. When one of the things that you could be and should be is dead.
At least silent. The least you can do is be silent, you know?
The least. How about you take your ass back to Camelot? You go back to Camelot and sleep.
That'd be too much like right. That'd be way too much like
right. Chelsea also benches Arthur because
the worst.
I just would feel like you are a 6th century ghost. You ain't got we are in the 21st. Leave me alone.
You know what we didn't mention, but I like this is a reminder. Arthur Pendragon said back in the day there was a group of women, which I might have been an allusion to the Morganes. There's a group of women who said that they could traverse the plains between life and death, but he didn't believe them. Now, here he is, a full ghost, seeing a woman traverse the plains between life and death, and he's like, oh, they might have been right. 15,000 years later, this man recognizes that he was wrong about some women, and all he says is, oh, I guess maybe they might have been right.
Mayhaps. I feel a little bit bad for
the persecution that they might have gotten. Ooh. Speaking of theories for Alice, maybe that's where her family line is from.
Ooh.
Maybe those are the Celts or whatever. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I really do want it to be, and I know, I'm not saying it won't, but I really do want it to be that there is some innate magic in her line.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I don't want it to be that's like a transference of power.
And I don't mind if that one thing is transference of power, and that's the thing that might have kicked off the knowledge but that like she also just
has
inherently has her own.
We love people who have their own.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Join us next week when we discuss chapters 25 through 27.
Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com and follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create.
Bye.